Hello, Maribor. It's really good to see you guys and to be here. I'm Joanna, and let's get going. So pretty grandiose title. I may as well call this How to Build a $1 Billion Company in 3 Easy Steps. It's a little bit of my sense of humour. It's perhaps a little cynical. I think the real title here is The Hard Startup Lessons That I Have Learnt Along the Way. So let's get going. So I wanted to kick off with a little bit about me. So I'm a designer, I'm a founder, and I'm a chief Makelighter. So the current project that I'm working on is Makelight. We make special effects for mobile phones at live events. So we can take a room full of people with their mobile devices and connect all of you up into the creative lighting, the sound show, any type of immersive effect that we want. And so this is the kind of thing that we're selling into big music venues, into sporting and conferencing. And I'll give you a bit of an idea of the types of shows that we've done. So this is a show we did in Berlin, actually, with Bookershade and Vodafone. So it was a brand activation. We transformed the audience into the light show and the video show through their mobile device. So those people in the back have all got their mobile phones out and joining in. This was a piece of online content which got views into the hundreds of thousands. This piece here we did with Channel 4. This was Stand Up to Cancer. It was a TV show, and so we activated the audience. You can see there they're holding their tablets, and we're getting that special effecting to happen. And this was broadcast across the UK, and we had millions of views with that. And we're really excited. Our next project is going to be going live in the US. We're going to have more reach than we've ever had before, which is pretty cool for us. But I'll show you this quick video that hopefully gives you a bit more of an idea of what we're up to with Makelight. Okay, so that's Makelight. So now you're up to speed with what I'm currently working on. But I wanted to dial it back a little bit and explain, I guess, how I've come to what I'm doing right now, and a little bit about me and my background. So I kind of started my first company when I was 16. I'd been organising lots of groups of people before that, but this was the first time I had a budget and money to spend with a group of organised people. At school, I was really into maths and physics, and I was really good at that, but I ended up going to art school. I think it's fair to say that my first creative tech role model was this woman here called Jem from Jem and the Holograms. Now, I don't know if this ever hit Slovenia, but I highly recommend looking it up online. Jem was basically someone who had a wearable earring that could project a hologram called Synergy, which would help her fight crime and battle against the evil misfits, who were the nemesis band to the holograms. So wearables, AR, VR, holograms, and live music, all in the 80s, and I can see how that's potentially been influential. I come from this place, which is New Zealand. And it's been really cool because the technology, or the people who power the Makelight technology, are an incredible company called Equalize, based right here in Maribor. So shout out to Luca, Blaj, and Tina if they're in the audience. And the more that I've been able to hang out with these guys, I've been able to understand that actually New Zealand and Slovenia have a little bit in common. Now, obviously, country size is not one of those things, but even though New Zealand is 10 times the landmass of Slovenia, we only have twice the amount of people. So, in the scale of the world, we're actually still quite small, both small countries with a relatively small population. But in terms of what the landscape looks like, it's actually very similar. So this is Slovenia, this is New Zealand, this is Slovenia, and New Zealand. And you guys have a beautiful fairy tale type land, and of course, so do we. So I'm telling you a bit of this background because I just think it's really important that you understand where I've come at when I've built companies and when I've taken products abroad, which is what I'm doing now. And you're going to have to excuse me, I've got notes. I've been closing a deal frantically for the last 2 weeks, so bear with me. So I've had the good fortune to end up living in both San Francisco and London for the last 2.5 years. Now, neither of these places are my hometown. I'm basically an outsider to both of them. But I think it's been really interesting as I've watched Silicon Valley embrace products and narratives made by people who weren't born in America. They didn't go to Stanford. They aren't ex-Google or Apple or ex-Goldman Sachs. It's really cool to see these stories come out from people who have had different experiences. Now, those obviously are great traits, and they can build great companies and great products. But I think it's really interesting to see the embracing that there are different stories to tell and different perspectives. I really believe it's important that we embrace who we are, where we've come from, and build products from that perspective. Just as the global marketplace for digital products is massively culturally varied, so we need our founders, our advisors, and investors to also be culturally varied. As soon as I started working with my Slovenian friends, I realised we had a bit in common, New Zealanders and Slovenians, and of course a lot that's really different. Sometimes I think we can feel like outsiders to the global conversation, that maybe our voice is perhaps a little more quiet to people who have come from bigger cities or world centres. I think that makes us try harder. I remember back to the days that we were in Wayra, the tech accelerator, which was where I met my Slovenian friends. Come 1 a.m. at any given night, it was the Kiwis and the Slovenians who were still in the accelerator, working like maniacs, trying to prove that we could build our products and we could make good. I guess we felt like maybe we had something to prove. I'm fiercely proud of where I come from. There's a Māori phrase called tūranga waiwai that means my place to stand. And I'm really glad to say that New Zealand is that place for me. However, growing up in the 80s and 90s in West Auckland, I think it's fair to say there were some fairly entrenched attitudes that I really had to push past to do what I wanted to do. So this is my first learning for getting your product to go forth and conquer. Make sure you are ready to go forth and conquer. I think my first learning is to embrace your roots, but be countercultural at the same time. It sounds like an oxymoron, but actually I think this is key to being transformative within the place that you come from. And I believe as technologists, we have a social responsibility to be positively transformative within the places we call home. For me, my countercultural acts were actually going to art school or design school. When I'd gone through high school and working in the academic classes and doing pretty well, the attitude was, oh, you got it. The attitude was that you only went to art school if you weren't very bright. I'm walking away from a secure and full-time job at one of the top design agencies in the country. So I think when I did this, my family and friends thought, that was a pretty crazy move. But I did that anyway. Deciding to live in 2 countries. Now, arguably, this is probably not the most sustainable practice, for sure, but I did it because I knew I needed to in order to build my business, to build our brand awareness, and achieve the scale that we were destined for. So I did it anyway. I identified the major territories that we were to have a presence within, and systematically worked my way around the world to gain a presence there. Starting with London, then Los Angeles, San Francisco, and now New York. So I guess my first point really is about knowing yourself, where you come from, and what your assumptions of the world are as a result. And you might have to identify how you may have to be countercultural to overcome some of those biases. So the next slide is a bunch of things I've been called at some point over the last 30 years. The thing with me is that I've never really been that bothered about what some people might say. And I think that segues into my next point, which is what you need to go to infinity and beyond, which is to get tough. You have to get pretty tough. There's no stunt driver to replace you on this ride. You either walk away or you don't. Elon Musk has a really great quote that I love that says, startup is kind of like eating glass and staring into the abyss. It's like a really poetic way of describing the existential crisis that sometimes this journey can be, right? And I can totally testify to that statement. Ben Horowitz's book, The Hard Thing About Hard Things, hit my reading list at exactly the right time. It's a really fantastic book that talks about a bunch of things, but including CEO psychology and founder psychology, something that's not so well talked about. His theories and discussions are both devastatingly insightful, but also quite comforting as you realise that actually this is happening to a bunch of people. So growing something that's outside of your comfort zone is exactly that, growing something outside of your comfort zone. So I developed another list of words to counteract that other list that you saw. So it's about being resilient, about fortitude, having stickability, being relentless, willful, determined. This path is definitely not for the faint-hearted. And it can be a lonely path, which is why my next learning is about strength in numbers. So we all get by with a little help from our friends, right? Whatever our life goals are, if it's starting a company, if it's building a product that's going to go forth and conquer globally, if it's having a family and raising humans that are going to contribute positively to society, we all need a support crew. Choose this team wisely. It's kind of like getting married, I think, sometimes. But don't get too worried if you get it wrong. That's okay. With like everything in life, sometimes you just have to roll with the punches. For me, I could never have taken my first company anywhere without the incredible support of my two design founders, Livia Lima and Miles Langley. Two incredible creative visionaries who have gone on to execute fantastic projects and products of their own. And the same goes for Makelight. So that product would never have gone past the initial stage if it weren't for the amazing work of the initial founders. So Sarah, Goff, Dylan and Nick, and their vision and determination. And also as we move now into the next growth stage, it's the people that have come around us are just incredibly stellar. Titans of industry, international music stars, Silicon Valley All-Stars, Slovenian Valley All-Stars. Shout out to Jean, Karen, Gary, David, Campbell, Ted, Larry, Kyle, Angus, Arabian, Tina, Luca, Blaj, and many, many more. Support yourself at every stage. People are what this whole game is about at the end of the day. Ultimately, if what we're doing is not going to make people's life better, then we're going to struggle to get it funded, downloaded, talked about, shared, and used frequently. So when it comes to getting your product to go forth and conquer at scale, the absolute crucial piece of the puzzle is to know your audience. It was great hearing Howard talk a lot about that earlier with some amazing insights. And I think we're going to hear a bit more of that as the couple of days go on. But it's really important to get under the skin of your audience. Understand not just who they are, but what they're all about. If we desire to make digital products that really resonate, that people love, share and use again, this is our challenge. To really understand and lead people in what they want. I was just going to play this without sound. Is that cool? So this, I guess, is an example of Makelight's audience, right? And I found the best way to do this is to spend time with those people who are our audience. to map what's orbiting them lifestyle-wise, digitally, to find out the key relationships they have with and who are the influential people in their lives. Where do they live? What are they about? The more that you try to understand who these people are who are going to use the digital product, the more likely that it is you'll create something that they'll really love. Make sure you get along to Matt Hart's keynote tomorrow, 9:30. He's an absolute expert in understanding audience dynamics and everything that comes with that. For me with Makelight, I think the key has been to spend just a lot of time at live events, right? And music events, at conferences, at sport games. The more that I remain part of the audience, the more likely I am to influence and lead the product development in the right direction for who these people are. And that leads me nicely to my fifth learning. Being there is everything. Walking amongst the crowd, seeing how people are using their mobile devices in these sorts of audiences is super important. Seeing how Makelight can bring another layer of excitement and connectivity. Just by being there, by being in the events and imagining what that could look like. One of the most important business tools that I have is not my MacBook Pro or my Wacom tablet or my Creative Suite or even my copy of Hooked book. It's my Muji carry-on case. So it's a slick, constant companion with all the travel that I have to do. And it sometimes does actually make me look like a bit of an assassin with a sniper rifle case trundling behind me in an airport, which is never too bad. But without a doubt, Makelight would never have raised money, closed the deals that we've closed, raised the brand awareness, and really gathered all the advisors and the supporters that we have internationally if I'd not packed up the Muji case and gone to see them. Since 2014, I guess it's been a guessing game of which country is Joanna in, which is not easy to get that balance right, for sure. But you have to be prepared to go there. It's definitely part and parcel of getting your product to go forth and conquer. So does this mean you have to leave Slovenia? Maybe, but maybe just for a period. This is currently how I'm doing it. So I'm a UK resident, building a UK company, and getting stuck in and involved into the London scene. But there are much more later stage and successful companies in New Zealand that were founded in New Zealand, grown in New Zealand, who are doing an amazing job taking on the international market. So I think it really depends on your setup and on what's important, what your success criteria looks like. For Makelight, it was access to the biggest venues in the world. And as much as I wanted to, I was not going to find those biggest venues in New Zealand. So I packed up the Muji and went out to find them. So, number 6. We're knowing about the audience, we're going out there to meet them, but we have to get the product right? So, I've come up with this eat, sleep, build, measure, learn, repeat. By definition, digital product development is cyclic. So we look for a methodology to repeat. Your company, your product will have its own version of this. My approach to this comes from an art and design school training. We would talk about drawing in and drawing out. So taking all that research and insight and then putting that into a series of conclusions or concepts, but not finishing there, then put those conclusions back out to test them, to get the feedback. It's an iterative process, kind of like your company's respiratory system. The success of the product ultimately dictates the life or death of the company. Breathe out the next product version, breathe in the feedback and the insight, and repeat. And your way of doing it will be completely unique based off your product leader, your CEO's objectives, and the company culture. The better this process is, the more attractive you're going to be for gaining new hires and your audience. And your company culture will be stronger and more enjoyable for everybody. So this is based on the Lean Startup methodology, which I'm sure you all know of. I mean, that's a talk in and of itself. So if you haven't come across this, I strongly recommend looking into it in terms of how you build your products. There's another really good book called the Hooked book, which talks about habit forming, developing habit-forming products. If you're building a B2C type proposition, this is really a really good one for that. But also there's lots of relevant points for other sorts of businesses. So the final learning I have to share today is something I'm still in progress of. And it's really simple to say, but it's super hard to do. And it's this. Just don't give up. I think really in order to go to infinity and beyond, you have to have some pretty strong resilience and really, frankly, just not give up. So in New Zealand, we have a radio competition where you can win a car. And the way that you win a car is basically people will all show up and place their hands on the car. And the person who wins that car is simply the person who holds on to that car without taking their hand off for the longest time. It's a pretty simple competition, but actually it's an incredibly hard thing to do, to endure all those other people and be the last person standing. I think in my experience, all these other learnings have actually been what have helped me not give up. I got grounded in where I came from. I got okay with being a little different to some of those things. I embraced the strength in numbers. I really got to know my audience and really went out there to be amongst them. And I'm constantly getting that feedback from the audience, from their experience, which we're putting into the product development. So that's been my life experience so far. I'm nowhere near finished. We're still in the thick of building. There's some really exciting things coming up for us. But I'm going to be sticking around, and I'd love to talk to you about your projects, where you're at, and yeah, feel free to get in touch. Thank you so much.